Hi, I'm Dr. Laurent Bannock and I'm the Director of the Institute of Performance Nutrition. And in this Science to Practice overview, I'm going to be focusing on lactic acid, lactate and exercise. So what is lactic acid and how is it produced? And in order to answer that, we're going to have to quickly delve into basic biochemistry as it relates to this topic. So firstly, during exercise, glycogen and glucose are broken down to pyruvate to produce adenosine triphosphate, otherwise known as ATP. And secondly, pyruvate can either enter the mitochondria for oxidation via aerobic metabolism for more of this ATP, or it can be reduced to lactic acid via anaerobic metabolism. And lactic acid is a weak acid and it rapidly dissociates into lactate and hydrogen ions, so there's never actually much lactic acid in the muscle and there's even less in the blood. So lactic acid and lactate are not the same thing. And so how does lactate metabolism relate to exercise and fatigue? Well, oxygen uptake and utilization increases linearly with exercise intensity. But lactate does not increase linearly. Rather, it is steady until aerobic metabolism cannot sustain the workload. And as anaerobic metabolism kicks in, the lactate threshold is reached and there is an exponential increase in blood lactate. Because lactic acid and subsequently lactate is produced as fatigue develops, people incorrectly claim it is a cause of fatigue at high workloads. So, does lactic acid really cause fatigue? No, it certainly does not. And in fact, lactate is a valuable fuel source for skeletal muscle, the heart, the brain, the kidneys, and also the liver. And here in this example, we can see that lactate is transported from fast twitch fibers to slow twitch fibers, which can then convert it back to pyruvate and oxidize it for ATP. In addition to this, there are increases in phosphate, altered ratios of high energy phosphates, reactive oxygen species, and a number of other factors which are thought to be produced and are the culprits of fatigue at higher workloads. So does lactic acid or lactate affect recovery? And the answer to that is a big no, because what the evidence tells us is that delayed muscle soreness is caused primarily by sensitized nociceptors, unstructural muscle damage, and inflammation. And so no studies have found a relationship between lactate and muscle soreness. So why then do some athletes measure lactate threshold? And there's a good answer to this because VO2 max is a measure of an athlete's maximal potential, whereas VO2 at lactate threshold or pace and power at lactate threshold is a measurement of the athlete's current ability. And VO2 max is minimally trainable in well-trained athletes, whereas lactate threshold has been shown to undergo more measurable improvements with training. And so what this means is that whilst VO2 max might not change with training, the ability to perform at a higher workload before lactate accumulation can be trained and measured. So what are the take-home messages on this topic? Well, neither lactic acid nor lactate are direct causes of fatigue at higher workloads. We also know that lactate is a valuable energy source in working muscle, non-working muscle, the heart, brain, liver and kidneys. We also know that the cause of delayed onset muscle soreness, otherwise known as DOMS, is quite multifaceted. However, it does not include lactic acid or lactate. And we also know that lactate threshold is a measurable and trainable variable that can help to monitor training adaptation. However, as always, there's more to this topic, and I recommend firstly that you consider reading this paper, Lactate Friend or Foe by Hall et al. I also highly recommend, if you want to take a really deep dive, particularly into this whole area of the science and translation of lactate shuttle theory, by one of the originators of this theory, Professor George Brooks. I really recommend you brave it and read this pretty deep paper on this topic. I also recommend for listening, you consider my podcast with Professor David Bishop, who's also an expert in this area, on lactate, lactic acid and performance. You can access those podcasts and related podcasts. You can also access more of these Science to Practice overview videos via our website, where you can also learn about our advanced training and education programs, and in particular our online advanced level diploma in performance nutrition. So thank you very much for listening, and do consider checking out our website. As already stated, is www.theiopn.com, and our various social media channels, which are all under @theiopn. Thank you very much.